Here we see a picture of a keyboard and a staff, and I hope that will help you understand something that's pretty important. How we build chords. What are chords? A chord is any three or more notes sounded together in succession, as we know. Chords are built with intervals, and we build them in thirds. That's why we call it tertian harmony. I should write that down somewhere. Tertian. Tertian, meaning thirds. And this was an idea that's been around for a couple hundred years. Remember, the third kind of music, homophonic music, was invented in the year 1600. We build the chords starting with each note in the diatonic scale. And we know these notes typically as 1, 2, right? We also use Roman numerals a lot, and that's a smart way of calling it, the 1. Let's see, build a chord on the 1, and you use thirds, like I said, tertian harmony. So we have a C, E, and G. Look at the first interval. It's a major third. So we're inclined to call this a major chord, C major. That's the 1 chord. Look at the 2 chord. If you do it the same way, space, 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 in thirds, because it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's how we're doing it. This is a minor third interval. So the 2 chord is minor. Put a small m there. Likewise here. Again, a minor third interval on the third. So the 3 chord is minor. In this case, E minor. Here's the 4 chord. The 4 chord, built on F, the 4th note in the scale, space, 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 you'll notice a major third. So it's a major chord. 5th, line, line, line. That, again, because of the major third interval, is a major chord. The 6th is minor third, so it's a minor chord. A minor, it's minor. The 7 is the only one that's different. Everything else has been a combination of major and minor. Here, it's 2 minor third intervals. And it's a unique chord built on the 7th. And we call it diminished. I want to show you something else that's important about chords. A chord, as you know, is any 3 or more notes played together in succession. Let's look at that easy to understand C chord. And I'm going to write it down here if I can. Hello. Let's write the C chord. Notice that the root of the chord is C. And it's not the only way to look at it. That's the first position. What if you do this? Is this a C chord or is this an E chord of some sort? Well, most of the time it's a C chord. You may find a way of calling it something else, but typically that's a C chord with E in the root. And following that, this would also be a C chord, only now the 5th is in the root. It's still a C chord. And when you analyze music or chords, you keep that in mind, what the chord is, what the key is. You kind of analyze what's the intention of the songwriter when you see a different note in the root, because it can be different notes in the root. And that happens a lot. Most of the time when you're reading music like that, you would see an indication, here's a C chord. But if they wanted E in the root, they would write C/E. And then you'd note the bottom note of the chord is going to be E. That happens a lot. We read these little alphabetical numerations here. Did I say that nice? I never said it that way. Alphabetical numerations. Sounds like a song I could make up. Alphabetical numerations. Well, okay, for later. But anyway, that's how we read music. Sometimes you don't get it that the accompanist isn't really reading the piano notation in front of them, right? Yeah, they're looking at the melody, but what they're really looking at is the chord chart above. The chords are indicated above the song, and you can improvise your own accompaniment following what the skeleton of the song is. What is the harmonic progression of chords? What's the idea? And this is a big indicator, like, hey, don't put C in the root, put E in the root here. And that happens a lot. We do that a lot. Okay. Take a look at that red dot. It's on the black key that's on the keyboard between F and G. And you might ask yourself, what is the correct name of that key? Is it a half step above F, making it F sharp? Or is it a half step below G, making it G flat? Well, it's both. And that's a term we call enharmonic. F sharp, G flat are enharmonically the same note. Let's take a look at a scale starting on D. And again, we just go line, space, or in this case, space, line. And let's look at all the notes in between D and D again. And remember, it has to follow the whole step, half step, whole step, half step formula for a diatonic scale. Between D and E is a whole step, as you can see here, right? And that's correct. But between E and F, that's a half step. And that's not right. It's supposed to be a whole step. Therefore, one would have to raise it up using that sharp sign indicating F sharp. And between F sharp and G is a half step. So that's going to work out fine right now. Let's look. Half step. Now remember, the others have to be whole step, half step. And let's see how that works out. We've got a whole step here, G to A to B is a whole step, B to C is a half step. Wowchie. That means you have to raise that one up too. It has to be D sharp, and that results in the half step that you need here. Therefore, we have just found out that if the key is D, that means D is 1. It's the tonic. Okay? If D is the tonic, in a diatonic scale, we're going to come up with two sharps, F sharp, C sharp. And when you read sheet music, the convenient way to indicate that is to write the key signature by putting in the sharp signs up here in that area, which is called the key signature. And now, reading music, you don't have to have that sharp in front of an F. You know it's F sharp because the key signature told you so. Now you understand something important. The do-re-mi scale is relative. It sounds the same, but it's relative to each of the chromatic steps that you find, 12 of them in the chromatic scale. There are 12 notes from D to D, and each one of them can be the tonic of a diatonic scale. And depending on where you start, you'll find out whether you have to have sharps or flats, because, as we already know, the only scale that doesn't need any sharps or flats is the one that starts on C. That's just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. No sharps, no flats, no need to. It works out right. Whole step, half step. Whole step, half step. Let's put some of the concepts together and write the tertian harmony in the key of D. We just saw that there's two sharps in the diatonic scale starting on D. So let's put the sharps in where they belong, on F sharp and C sharp. That means that when we write these notes out, I don't have to put in that accidental sign. We'll know automatically by looking at the key signature. Well, there are the 7 notes of the diatonic scale, including the octave, which makes it 8 notes. Now just fill in space, 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 line, line, line. We know we're building in thirds, and you can see 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. And we're writing out that the chords, and these are the chords that you're going to be finding in that key, most likely all the time. Uh-oh, we need a ledger line here. There you go. Now, since we know that every F is F sharp and every C is C sharp, we can look at these chords and name them correctly. We know that the 1 chord is major, the 2 chord is minor, 3 chord is minor, 4 chord is major, 5 chord is major, 6 chord is minor, and the 7 chord is diminished. That's the way it is. It's that way in every scale. It doesn't change. The diatonic scale has to be what it is, and therefore the tertian harmony built in that key will be this. It'll be a 1 chord is major, the D major chord. That's an easy way to understand the language of music, the language of keys,